Welcome, dear friends, to a tale of unexpected connections, where fate's twists and turns lead to the discovery that family can be found in the most surprising places. Enjoy the story. Olivia Parker's Louboutins clicked furiously against the pavement as she navigated the bustling streets of downtown Chicago. The sleek lawyer was the picture of corporate success in her tailored Armani suit, but the frantic glances at her watch betrayed her mounting panic. "Damn it, damn it, damn it," she muttered under her breath, dodging a puddle and nearly colliding with a hot dog vendor. The most important meeting of her career was in exactly 7 minutes, and she was still 3 blocks away from the office. Just as she prepared to break into an undignified sprint, a small voice pierced through the urban cacophony. "Please, miss, can you help me?" Olivia froze, one foot hovering above the curb. She turned slowly, already knowing that whatever she saw would derail her carefully planned day. There, standing on the grimy sidewalk, was a young boy of no more than 7. His mop of fair hair was matted with dirt, and blood trickled from his nose, smearing across tear-stained cheeks. "Oh, sweetie," Olivia sighed, her heart melting despite her best efforts to remain detached. "What happened to you?" As the boy, Tommy, she would soon learn, poured out his tale of bullies and a stolen bag, Olivia felt her professional aspirations slipping away. By the time a young Romani girl appeared to confirm Tommy's story of an abusive grandmother, Olivia knew her fate was sealed. "All right, Tommy," she said, kicking off her ruined Louboutins and hiking up her skirt. "Let's get that bag of yours, shall we?" 20 minutes later, with her stockings laddered, her skirt torn, and her hair a mess, Olivia marched into the towering glass offices of Campbell & Associates, a bedraggled Tommy in tow. As the elevator dinged open on the 47th floor, Olivia squared her shoulders and prepared for battle. She knew Nathan Campbell, her boss, her ex-lover, and the man who still made her heart race, would be furious. But as she looked down at Tommy's trusting face, she knew she'd made the right choice. Little did she know, this impulsive act of kindness was about to turn her world upside down. As Olivia strode towards Nathan's office, her mind whirled with memories of their complicated past. It had been just over 2 years since she'd joined the firm, but her history with Nathan stretched back much further. They had first met as bright-eyed college students, both full of ambition and dreams. Nathan, with his chiseled jaw and confident swagger, had caught Olivia's eye immediately. But timing and circumstance had kept them apart, and they drifted into separate lives. When fate brought them back together 25 years later, the spark had reignited with a vengeance. Olivia remembered their first business dinner that had stretched late into the night, filled with laughter and heated glances. She recalled stolen kisses in the office after hours, the thrill of their secret romance adding spice to their corporate lives. For a year, Olivia had been happier than she'd ever thought possible. But as the months wore on, she'd begun to yearn for more. The stolen moments and clandestine meetings weren't enough anymore. She wanted a real relationship, a future. Nathan, it seemed, had other ideas. The memory of their last confrontation still stung. Olivia had poured out her heart, asking Nathan where their relationship was going. His response had been like a bucket of ice water. "Going?" he'd said, his voice cool and detached. "Olivia, we're colleagues, friends even, but anything more would be inappropriate." Just like that, he'd reduced their year-long romance to nothing more than a workplace dalliance. Olivia had held her head high, refusing to let him see how deeply his words had cut. "Of course," she'd replied, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. "How foolish of me to think otherwise." She'd walked out of his office that day with her pride intact, but her heart in pieces. Since then, their interactions had been strictly professional, the warmth of their past relationship replaced by an icy formality. Now, as Olivia approached Nathan's office with a battered child in tow and the remnants of her professional composure in tatters, she couldn't help but wonder if this would be the final nail in the coffin of her career, and any lingering hope for reconciliation with Nathan. Taking a deep breath, she knocked on the imposing oak door. "Come in!" Nathan's deep voice called out, sending an involuntary shiver down Olivia's spine. Here goes nothing, she thought, and stepped into the lion's den. Nathan Campbell's office was a testament to power and success. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the Chicago skyline, while the walls were adorned with degrees, awards, and photographs of Nathan shaking hands with various dignitaries. But Olivia had eyes only for the man behind the massive mahogany desk. Nathan Campbell, at 49, was more handsome than ever. Silver streaked his dark hair at the temples, and laugh lines crinkled the corners of his eyes. But those eyes, usually warm and inviting, now blazed with fury. "Olivia," he said, his voice dangerously low, "would you care to explain why you missed the Henderson meeting? A meeting, need I remind you, that could have secured us the biggest client this firm has ever seen?" Olivia opened her mouth to respond, but Nathan steamrolled over her. "Do you have any idea what I've had to do to smooth things over? The promises I've had to make? The groveling?" He slammed his hand on the desk, making Olivia jump. "And now you waltz in here looking like... He gestured wildly at her disheveled appearance, seemingly at a loss for words. Olivia straightened her spine, ready to defend herself, but a small voice beat her to it. "It's my fault, mister." Both adults turned to see Tommy, who had slipped into the office unnoticed. He stood there, small and grimy, but with a determined set to his jaw. "The nice lady was helping me. Please don't be mad at her." Nathan's eyes widened as he took in the boy's appearance. What?" he sputtered, his anger momentarily forgotten in his confusion. Olivia seized the opportunity to explain, words tumbling out in a rush. She told Nathan about finding Tommy, about the bullies and the abusive grandmother, about her desperate climb to retrieve the boy's bag. As she spoke, she moved to Nathan's side of the desk, closer than she'd allowed herself to be in months. "I know I messed up, Nathan. I know this could cost us the client, but I couldn't just walk away. I couldn't—" Nathan's expression had softened as he listened, the fury in his eyes replaced by something Olivia couldn't quite read. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, Tommy stepped forward and placed a small hand on Nathan's arm. "Thank you for not being mad at the nice lady," Tommy said solemnly. Nathan looked down at the boy's hand, a strange expression crossing his face. Slowly, almost as if in a trance, he turned Tommy's hand over. There, on the soft skin above Tommy's thumb, was a birthmark. A perfect sphere, pierced by what looked like an arrow. Nathan's face drained of color. He staggered back, gripping the edge of his desk for support. "Nathan?" Olivia asked, alarmed. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." Nathan's eyes, when they met hers, were filled with a mixture of shock, hope, and utter terror. "Not a ghost, Olivia," he whispered. "But maybe a miracle." The atmosphere in Nathan's office had shifted dramatically. The anger that had filled the room moments ago had been replaced by a heavy, expectant silence. Nathan hadn't taken his eyes off Tommy's birthmark, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. Olivia, sensing the gravity of the moment, knelt down beside Tommy. "Sweetie, why don't you go with Miss Johnson for a bit? I bet she has some coloring books in her desk." Once Tommy had been ushered out, Olivia turned to Nathan, who had collapsed into his chair, his head in his hands. "Nathan," she said softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "What's going on? What did you see?" Nathan looked up at her, his eyes red-rimmed. Without a word, he stood and walked to the bar in the corner of his office. He poured himself a generous measure of scotch, downed it in one gulp, then poured another. "I've never told you about my first wife," he said finally, his voice rough. "Or my son." Olivia's breath caught. In all their time together, Nathan had never mentioned a previous marriage or a child. She'd always assumed his reticence about his past was due to some painful divorce. "Her name was Leanne," Nathan continued, staring out the window. "We married young. She was quiet, loved books and staying home, and I was an idiot." He turned to face Olivia, his expression haunted. "As my career took off, I started spending more and more time away from home. Parties, business trips, you name it. I barely noticed when Leanne got sick. By the time I realized how serious it was too late." Olivia's heart ached for him. "Oh, Nathan," she whispered. "Paul, our son, he was 15 when Leanne died. He blamed me, and he was right to. I threw myself into work, into partying, anything to avoid dealing with the guilt. Nathan's laugh was bitter. I even remarried, if you can believe it, barely a year after Leanne's death. What happened? Olivia asked gently. Nathan's face darkened. Cynthia, my second wife, she accused Paul of making advances towards her. I was a fool. I believed her. I threw my own son out of the house. Olivia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. A year later, I got a call from the hospital. Paul had been in an accident. By the time I got there, Nathan's voice broke. He told me the truth about Cynthia, told me he had a wife, a Romani girl, said they were in danger, and then he was gone. Tears were flowing freely down Nathan's face now. Olivia wanted nothing more than to take him in her arms, to comfort him, but she held back. Nathan, she said carefully, the birthmark on Tommy's hand. Nathan nodded, wiping his eyes. Paul had the exact same mark. Olivia, I think that little boy might be my grandson. The weight of this revelation hung heavy in the air. Olivia's mind raced, trying to process everything she'd just learned. What do we do now? She asked finally. Nathan straightened, a new determination in his eyes. Now we find out the truth. About Tommy, about his mother, about everything. And Olivia? He reached out, taking her hand in his. I can't do this alone. Will you help me? Olivia squeezed his hand, her heart swelling with a mixture of love, pain, and hope. Of course, she said. Always. As they stood there, hands clasped, both knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of activity. Nathan, driven by a desperate need to uncover the truth, threw all of his considerable resources into investigating Tommy's background. Olivia, meanwhile, found herself thrust into an unexpected role as Tommy's temporary guardian. She took a leave of absence from work, dedicating herself to caring for the boy while Nathan pursued leads. As she watched Tommy sleep on her couch that first night, Olivia's mind whirled with questions. How had this little boy ended up on the streets? What had happened to his mother? And how would Nathan handle the responsibility of a grandson if their suspicions proved correct? Her phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. Any news? Olivia sighed, typing back. He's sleeping, ate like he hasn't seen food in days. Nathan, what he's told me about his life? It's heartbreaking. Nathan's response came quickly. We'll make it right, Liv. I promise. The use of her old nickname sent a warmth spreading through Olivia's chest. Despite everything, despite the pain and the years of separation, Nathan still had the power to make her heart flutter. Days turned into a week, and slowly, pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Nathan's private investigators uncovered a trail leading from Chicago to a small Romani community in rural Illinois. It's them, Olivia, Nathan said one evening, pacing her living room while Tommy played with Legos on the floor. Paul's wife, Tommy's mother, her name is Sarah. She disappeared right after Paul's death. The community closed ranks, wouldn't tell the investigators anything. Olivia watched Tommy, marveling at how quickly she'd grown attached to the boy. What do we do now? Nathan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made Olivia's heart ache. We go there, we talk to them, we find out what happened to Sarah, and we make sure Tommy is safe. Olivia nodded, then hesitated. Nathan, what if they don't want to let him go? What if Sarah is still alive and wants to keep him? The pain that flashed across Nathan's face was almost unbearable to see. Then we'll do what's best for Tommy, no matter what that means for us. As Nathan knelt down to join Tommy in his Lego construction, Olivia was struck by how natural they looked together. In just a week, Nathan had transformed from a hard-driving corporate lawyer to a doting grandfather. And as for herself, Olivia was surprised to realize that she'd started thinking of them as a family, a strange, sudden, unexpected family, but a family nonetheless. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. Because if this all worked out, if Tommy really was Nathan's grandson and they got to keep him, where did that leave her? The journey to the Romani community was tense. Tommy, excited for a road trip adventure, chattered happily in the back seat, oblivious to the adults' anxiety. Nathan gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white, while Olivia tried to calm her nerves by running through potential legal scenarios in her head. As they pulled into the small, close-knit community, curious eyes peered out from behind curtains. Nathan parked the car, then turned to Olivia. "Ready?" he asked, his voice tight with apprehension. Olivia nodded, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "Together," she said firmly. They hadn't taken more than a few steps when a weathered old woman emerged from one of the trailers, her eyes locked on Tommy. "So," she said, her voice raspy with age and cigarettes, "you've come back." Tommy shrank back against Olivia's leg, his earlier excitement evaporating. "Grandma," he whispered. Nathan stepped forward, his lawyer persona taking over. "Ma'am, we need to talk about Tommy's situation, about his mother, Sarah, and about my son, Paul." The old woman's eyes narrowed. "We don't talk to outsiders about family business," she spat. "Please," Olivia interjected, her voice gentle but firm. "We're not here to cause trouble. We just want to understand what happened. Tommy deserves to know his history, don't you think?" For a long moment, the old woman said nothing. Then, with a resigned sigh, she jerked her head towards her trailer. "Come in then, but the boy stays outside." Olivia hesitated, reluctant to let Tommy out of her sight. A young woman approached, smiling kindly. "I'll watch him," she offered. "We'll be right here where you can see us." Inside the cramped trailer, the old woman, who introduced herself simply as Magda, told a tale that left both Nathan and Olivia reeling. Sarah, it turned out, had indeed survived Paul's death, but the trauma of losing her husband, coupled with the community's disapproval of her marriage to an outsider, had taken its toll. She'd fallen into a deep depression, struggling to care for her newborn son. "We did what we had to," Magda said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Sarah wasn't fit to raise the boy. We took him in, raised him in our ways." Nathan's face was a mask of barely contained rage. "You kept my grandson from me," he growled. "You denied him his heritage, his family." Magda's eyes flashed. "Family? Where were you when Sarah was alone and scared? Where were you when Tommy was hungry and cold?" Olivia placed a restraining hand on Nathan's arm, feeling the tension thrumming through him. "What happened to Sarah?" she asked softly. A flicker of something, regret, sorrow, passed over Magda's weathered face. "She left," the old woman said finally, "about a year after Tommy was born. Said she couldn't bear to see him, that he reminded her too much of Paul. We haven't heard from her since." The silence that followed was deafening. Nathan slumped in his chair, the weight of lost years pressing down on him. Olivia's mind raced, trying to process the implications of everything they'd learned. "And Tommy?" she asked. "How did he end up on the streets of Chicago?" Magda's expression hardened. "The boy is willful, disobedient. He needs a firm hand to keep him in line." "A firm hand?" Nathan exploded, rising to his feet. "Is that what you call abuse? Locking a child in a closet? Denying him food?" Before Magda could respond, a commotion outside drew their attention. They rushed out to find Tommy surrounded by a group of children, tears streaming down his face. "I'm not going back," he was shouting. "You can't make me!" Olivia was at his side in an instant, gathering him into her arms. "Shh, it's okay," she soothed. "You're safe. We're not going to let anyone hurt you." Nathan knelt beside them, his hand gentle on Tommy's back. "Tommy," he said softly, "how would you like to come live with me and Olivia? We can be a family, a real family." Tommy's tear-stained face lit up with hope. "Really? You mean it?" Nathan nodded, his own eyes glistening. "I mean it, buddy, if that's what you want." "You can't do this," Magda protested. "He belongs here with his people." Olivia stood, Tommy cradled protectively in her arms. Her lawyer instincts kicked in, her voice cool and authoritative. "Actually, we can. Nathan is Tommy's legal next of kin. Unless you have official guardianship papers, which I highly doubt, you have no claim on him." She turned to Nathan, her expression softening. "Let's go home." As they drove away, Tommy safely buckled in the back seat. Olivia felt a mix of emotions swirling within her. Relief that Tommy was safe, anger at what he'd endured, and an overwhelming sense of protectiveness for this little boy who'd so unexpectedly entered their lives. She glanced at Nathan, saw the tension in his jaw, the white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel. Gently, she placed her hand over his. "We did it," she said softly. "He's safe now." Nathan's eyes met hers, a storm of emotions swirling in their depths. "Thank you," he whispered. "I couldn't have done this without you, Liv." As the miles stretched behind them, Olivia realized that their journey was far from over. They had Tommy, yes, but now came the challenging part, building a family from the broken pieces of their pasts. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Nathan threw himself into creating a home for Tommy, transforming his sleek bachelor pad into a warm, child-friendly space. Olivia found herself spending more and more time there, helping Tommy settle in and navigating the complex world of sudden parenthood alongside Nathan. One evening, as they sat on Nathan's balcony watching Tommy play in the newly installed backyard swing set, Olivia broached the subject they'd both been avoiding. "Nathan," she began hesitantly, "what happens now? With us, I mean." Nathan was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on Tommy's laughing form. "I've been thinking about that a lot," he finally said. "Liv, I know I hurt you before. I was scared, stupid, trapped in my own past." He turned to her, his eyes filled with a vulnerability she'd never seen before. "But these past weeks, watching you with Tommy, seeing how naturally you've stepped into this role, I've realized something." Olivia's heart raced. "What's that?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "That I love you," Nathan said simply. "That I've always loved you, and that I want us to be a family, you, me, and Tommy." Before Olivia could respond, Tommy's voice rang out from the yard. "Grandpa! Olivia! Watch this!" They turned to see Tommy attempting a daring leap from the swing. Nathan was on his feet in an instant, racing to catch the boy before he could hurt himself. Olivia watched them, her heart full to bursting. This was what she'd always wanted, a family, a home, love. But could she trust it? Could she trust Nathan not to push her away again when things got tough? As if reading her thoughts, Nathan returned to the balcony, Tommy giggling in his arms. "I know I'm asking a lot," he said softly. "I know I don't deserve a second chance, but I promise you, Olivia, if you'll have me, if you'll have us, I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it." Tommy squirmed out of Nathan's grasp and threw his arms around Olivia's neck. "Please say yes," he whispered in her ear. "I want you to be my grandma." Tears sprang to Olivia's eyes as she hugged Tommy close. She looked up at Nathan, saw the love and hope shining in his eyes, and knew there was only one answer she could give. "Yes," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes to all of it." 6 months later, Olivia stood in front of a full-length mirror, hardly recognizing the woman who stared back at her. The white dress she wore was simple but elegant, a far cry from the power suits she'd worn for so many years. A soft knock at the door preceded Tommy's entrance. The boy, dapper in his little tuxedo, beamed up at her. "You look pretty, Grandma Olivia," he said shyly. Olivia's heart melted. She knelt down, careful not to wrinkle her dress, and pulled Tommy into a hug. "Thank you, sweetheart. Are you ready for your big job?" Tommy nodded solemnly, clutching the small pillow that held the wedding rings. "I won't drop them, I promise." A gentle laugh from the doorway made them both look up. Nathan stood there, looking devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo, his eyes filled with love as he gazed at his soon-to-be wife and his grandson. "It's time," he said softly. As they made their way to the small garden where their closest friends and family waited, Olivia felt a sense of peace settle over her. The path that had led them here had been winding and sometimes painful, but she wouldn't have changed a moment of it. The ceremony was a blur of happy tears and heartfelt vows. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Nathan pulled Olivia close, whispering, "I love you," against her lips before kissing her with a passion that made their guests cheer and Tommy giggle. At the reception, as they swayed together for their first dance, Nathan leaned in close. "I have something to tell you," he murmured. Olivia looked up at him, curiosity piqued. "What is it?" Nathan's eyes sparkled with excitement. "I've been thinking about our future, about Tommy's future, and I've made a decision." He took a deep breath before continuing. I'm stepping down as managing partner at the firm. Olivia's eyes widened in surprise. Nathan, are you sure? The firm has been your life for so long. He nodded, his expression serene. It has. But now, you and Tommy are my life. I want to be there for every moment, every milestone. I'm going to take on a reduced caseload, focus on pro bono work. Maybe even start a foundation to help kids like Tommy. Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes. Oh, Nathan, she whispered, touched by his commitment to their family. And there's more, Nathan added, a hint of nervousness in his voice. I was hoping. Well, I was wondering if you'd consider adopting Tommy, officially, making our family complete in every way. Olivia's heart soared. She'd grown to love Tommy as her own over the past months, but had hesitated to bring up adoption, not wanting to overstep. Yes, she said without hesitation. Yes, absolutely yes. Their joyful moment was interrupted by a small hand tugging at Nathan's sleeve. They looked down to see Tommy, his eyes wide with excitement. Does this mean you'll be my real grandma now? He asked Olivia. Olivia knelt down, bringing herself to eye level with the boy who had changed their lives in so many ways. Tommy, sweetheart, I've been your real grandma from the moment I met you. This just makes it official. Tommy threw his arms around her neck, nearly knocking her off balance. Nathan steadied them both, enveloping them in a group hug that felt like coming home. As the music played and their loved ones celebrated around them, Olivia marveled at the twists and turns of fate that had brought her to this moment. From a chance encounter with a little boy on the street to a whirlwind romance rekindled, from heartbreak to healing, it had all led to this. A family, whole and complete and filled with love. And in that moment, surrounded by the love of her husband and their grandson, Olivia Parker Campbell knew that sometimes, just sometimes, happily ever after, really did exist.